Space, the final frontier.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the wonderful black hole of sports podcast. This is episode 5. As always, I'm Jeremy, aka JB Huskers, brought to you by thegamingtailgate.com. And today we're going to go over the NFL a little bit of fantasy baseball as always. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the whole Tim Tebow Twittergate and the Hall of Fame induction for the NFL that just happened over this past weekend. Also, SummerSlam, one of the big 4 pay-per-views for the WWE, is on tap this weekend. We will cover that as well. Let's first start with some of the big news from this past week. Randy Moss, one of the best wide receivers of all time, decided to make his retirement. Of course, we live in the world of Brett Favre, so we kind of wonder if he's actually going to retire. But for now, we're going to kind of pretend that he did retire. And the big question is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? I say 110% yes. There's a lot of people that say no, maybe because of his antics, what he's done in the past. Overall, he's not really gotten in trouble. He's had a couple little bit of run-ins. He's never cheated, He's never tested positive for anything, And so I believe the proof is in his statistics. Let's go over those real quick. 10 1,000-plus yard receiving seasons. That's second all-time. 64 career 100-yard games, that is second all-time. 153 touchdown receptions, second of all time. 73.6 receiving yards per game, that is 7th of all time. 154 total touchdowns scored, that's 4th all time. 14,858 receiving yards, that's 6th all time. And 954 career receptions, good for 10th all time. I think all those stats combined definitely make him a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's been selfish and egotistic, but this isn't the Hall of Fame of people who act nice. So I definitely think that Randy Moss should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And if Brett Favre stays retired too, they'll get to go into the Hall together, and that'll make definitely an interesting ceremony. Like I said, outside of the minor things, he really doesn't get in trouble. He's not really that bad of a guy. But when it's all said and done, I do believe that he will be looked upon as one of the game's best wide receivers of all time. Some think that the retirement isn't permanent, like I said earlier. It's hard to tell at this point. Does he just not want to go through training camp at his age? It is very hard to tell. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in, because we live in that post-Brett Favre, is he or isn't he going to retire world. And unfortunately, that's the world we're living in with some of these guys. And of course, Brett Favre is now being rumored to join the Dolphins, and the world collectively gives a good sigh and a face palm for that. We go to week 2 of the NFL free agency. A little bit of dealing going on here. The smoke has not quite settled, even though the first week was fast and furious. The biggest move signed by, surprise, surprise, the Philadelphia Eagles. No, they're not the Beagles, as some people are kind of, comparing them to the Heat and the Heatles. They're definitely not the Beagles, but I don't think they're going to be any lying dog either with some of these guys they're picking up. Big pickup this week to complement LaShawn McCoy, Ronnie Brown from the Miami Dolphins. He gives the Eagles some good insurance that they really didn't have last year when he would get injured. Ronnie Brown is 29 years old. He may still have a year or so in the tank. That's why the Eagles only gave him a 1-year deal, kind of a show-me-what-you-got deal. And it's just amazing that the talent that the Eagles have stockpiled this year. And definitely they're going to be a must-see team. And, of course, a must-play team for Madden NFL 12 that comes out here in about 3 weeks. Maud Bradshaw re-signs with the Giants. A lot of speculation. Thought he was going to go test the waters and choose another team. This is absolutely needed for the Giants to try to keep pace with the Eagles, but I really don't think the Giants, Cowboys, and Redskins really have a chance here. I don't know about the Eagles being completely a Super Bowl winning team. Can't just give them that just yet. Once I break down the NFL, do the little NFL preview for you here in a couple weeks, we'll kind of see how that all plays out, see if I do put the Eagles that far into winning it all. Another signing, Oakland does a nice job signing Kevin Boss to replace Zach Miller. Oakland went 8-8 last season with a solid team. They do lose Asamoah, but that's another team that's going to be interesting to see how I pick here in a couple of weeks. Not sure if it's really enough to keep pace with the Chargers and Chiefs because they've done pretty well themselves, but Kevin Boss is definitely a nice compliment for replacing Zach Miller there. The Tennessee Titans are not having the greatest of off seasons, but they did sign a great defender, great linebacker in Barrett Ruud, the former Nebraska Cornhusker. Very surprising that Tampa Bay decided not to re-sign him. This should help a middle-of-the-road Tennessee Titans defense become better, as he led the league in tackles. Some big names that are still out there, Steve Smith of the New York Giants. He is still trying to finish some rehab from an injury. So most likely look to sign a one-year deal. I'm going to guess the Giants are going to re-sign him here. And also Lofa Tatupu, that was released surprisingly by the Seahawks. He is still a free agent. And according to ESPN Insider, he has the second best grade of available free agents. Some interesting news coming out through the Twitter waves, and ESPN just completely blew their load on this whole story. Merrill Hodge, one of the best analysts in the business for the NFL, for ESPN, he went on to Twitter last week to express how unimpressed he was with Tim Tebow. He went on to follow that up with an appearance last Thursday on Mike and Mike in the Morning, and he said, quote, "I compare him to Brian Bosworth as far as the hype. What Brian Bosworth did is created all this hype about himself. Comes to the NFL and he was average at best. Because he'd come into the league with all his hype and players do not like that, they cannot stand that, and they go out of their way to take shots at him." Hodge went on to say that Tebow has a marginal skill set. And of all guys to come to Tebow's defense, LeBron James jumps in and says, "Tim Tebow will succeed in the NFL. He's a hard worker, a student of the game, a natural-born leader, and most of all, a winner." Guys get on that TV and act like they were all-world. Great English there, LeBron, when they played. And how about encouraging him and wishing him the best instead of hating? Well, unfortunately, Merrill Hodge is right. The proof is in the pudding. So far in this preseason, Tebow's done nothing but slip down that depth chart, and now it looks like he may be holding the clipboard as position number 3. It almost looks like Brady Quinn is outperforming him at this point. If Tebow's going to become a quarterback in the NFL, it's going to take 4 or 5 years. His skill set just does not transfer to the NFL, regardless of how popular his jersey sells. I mean, this is just like the WWE. Vince McMahon has pushed John Cena and Rey Mysterio in the spotlight. Well, it's because they're the biggest merch sellers. And only really one of those two is a good wrestler, and it's Rey Mysterio. It sure as hell ain't John Cena. So Tim Tebow is making the Broncos a lot of money with those jersey sales. So, yeah, and the people are liking him, so yeah, let's have him take snaps with the first team. Well, he's just not really performing. Then you look at who's your starter, Kyle Orton. You can't really be sad about that. He's one of the better passers in the league over the past couple of years. The past 2 years, he's thrown over 7,400 yards and 41 touchdowns. He made Brandon Lloyd into a superstar after being a complete bust for damn near half a decade. Definitely don't want to be discouraged that Kyle Orton is your quarterback. My opinion for Tim Tebow, he should just swallow his pride and embrace his athleticism. I give him, if he's not improved by the end of next year, I would say he should just, embrace what he's got and become a top running back in the league. He's got speed, he's got power and determination. I'm not a Tebow hater. I was in college just because ESPN, gave him a blowjob every time they mentioned him. That really made people kind of dislike him. I like him as a person, and even though he can shove that religion down your throat, God bless. But I'm rooting for him to succeed in the league. It makes for a great league story. I do want him to succeed at quarterback, but, you're just looking at the proof right now, and it does not look like it's there. I think he would be a hell of a running back, but we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of years. At least it gives ESPN something to talk about. This past Saturday in Canton, Ohio, the NFL Hall of Fame induction took place. Some great players were inducted to the Hall of Fame, including a couple of old school guys. Les Richter, he was a Rams linebacker. He had a rugged, punishing style of play and made 8 straight Pro Bowls from 54 to 61. Chris Hamburger was another linebacker from the Washington Redskins. He was called a defensive quarterback and one of the most dependable and steady linebackers of his era. He was a part of that dominant Redskin team of the 1970s. One of the flashier guys ever to go into the Hall of Fame, Deion Sanders, one of my favorite speeches of the day. Very emotional, loved it. He's one of the most charismatic players of all time. Definitely deserving of the Hall of Fame. Kind of loved the little touch he did on the end of his speech, put a do-rag on his bust. Very, very Deion-like, I would say. One of the guys, once that fantasy football boom really started kicking into the nation, with the internet really kicking in, that was right about the time Marshall Faulk was amazing. For the Rams and the Colts, he ranks 9th all-time in rushing. He's always been a class act. Just amazing what he was able to do for those two teams in that era. Personal favorite of mine from Da Bears, Richard Dent, one of the best monsters of the Midway, relentless and punishing. That was what Richard Dent was. Super Bowl 20 MVP, and of course, definitely, in my opinion, well deserving of a Hall of Fame induction. Ed Sable, this guy, the man behind NFL films. The sole reason why people are fanatically interested into the NFL today is because of this guy. His ideas for the sideline cameras, mics on the coaches, it brought people into the game like never before. And the problem is, it's a complete shame that people did not think he should be in the Hall of Fame over a player. Like, why don't you put a player in over him? Well, no. He's probably the sole reason why you watch the NFL in the first place. His brilliance is probably the most revolutionary piece in sports history, and to think that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame is completely ridiculous. Let's change gears completely to sports in quotations, as you would say, professional wrestling. WWE SummerSlam is going to be live from Los Angeles, California on this coming Sunday. I am personally going to be able to actually attend this one. This is the very first time I've actually attended a WWE pay-per-view. Actually, the first time I've ever been in California. I want to give a big thanks to THQ. They are going to fly me and a few guys out to the events here. We're going to take a look at the new game, WWE 12. We're going to have a little bit of a WWE All-Stars tournament also, and we get to go to Access and then, of course, go to the pay-per-view. Going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait. Weird thing is there's only 4 matches announced so far. With SmackDown taping tonight, I'm sure we'll find out of a couple more. There may be also some impromptu matches with The Miz, maybe against Rey Mysterio after what happened last night on Raw. That could be a possibility. But for now, we just have 4 matches that we know so far. First one I'm going to talk about is one that a lot of people don't care about. Unfortunately, the Divas division in the WWE is completely horrible. Beth Phoenix just recently turned into a heel, which is great. We all love that. She's a good heel. The Divas division was actually starting to get interesting when Karma first came, or Awesome Kong from TNA, when she first came to the WWE and started beating up all the divas. It kind of made things interesting again. So we needed to have a good heel because the Bellas, I don't think, are cutting it. Beth Phoenix definitely does. I think Beth Phoenix is going to win this match. No problem there. Another match from SmackDown, Sheamus against Mark Henry. Sheamus just recently a good guy now, and I think the WWE has done a great job in turning Sheamus face. He's the one that's actually stood up to Mark Henry in his wave of terror, taking out the Kane and Big Show recently. Mark Henry, a guy that just recently turned heel and has done so very well. So the WWE's done a great job in turning these guys lately. Doing a lot better than TNA, which turns a guy heel every other week and then back to a good guy. It's just insane. This one, I think Mark Henry's going to win. I think they're going to set up Mark Henry destroying Sheamus and then setting his sights on Randy Orton next. So look for Mark Henry to beat Sheamus there in that match. Down to the 2 title matches of what's left that's announced. SmackDown side, Christian's going to take on Randy Orton in a no disqualification match. These guys have had some classics this year so far. This no disqualification match should be a treat to watch. If they go over 20 minutes, I think we're going to have ourselves a 4-star match out of 5. Especially since this is no DQ, anything can happen. Randy Orton's a little crazy, so I think Mark Henry may cost Orton this match here, and I think Christian will get the win. I just don't see giving the belt to Christian for a second time and then having another short run. And so this is where I think that Mark Henry starts that feud with Orton where he costs him the title. And but that kind of leaves an interesting thing, though. I mean, if Christian retains the title, there's not really a top face to really go against Christian at this point. That's where I kind of think if there could be a possibility of Sheamus and Mark Henry going to a double disqualification or a double countout. That could set maybe a triple threat matchup between Sheamus, Mark Henry, and Christian. Or on the other side of the coin, Mark Henry beats Sheamus and Randy Orton beats Christian, and then Mark Henry comes down for a beatdown after the match. That could start that feud too. But I'm going to go with Christian winning that match. The WWE Championship is between John Cena and CM Punk. Just announced last night, Triple H is the special guest referee. I think this one should be also another classic. Their Money in the Bank match, their championship match there was probably top 2 of the year, maybe number 2 behind maybe Triple H and Undertaker from WrestleMania. I think this one Punk's going to take out Cena, but I do find it very odd that Alberto Del Rio does not have an advertised match yet. So I have a feeling that Punk's going to beat Cena, but I think Del Rio might be cashing in that Money in the Bank. Right now we're going to go to some quick hitters here, hit on a couple of stories that occurred over the past week and a half. Adam Scott winning the Bridgestone Invitational, and it's kind of ironic. He wins the first tourney that Tiger has returned, and of course Adam Scott is using his old caddy, and of course Adam Scott's caddy is none other than Steve Williams, and apparently he likes to talk. He proclaimed that the win was the greatest win of his life, and I was kind of halfway on Steve Williams' side. He needs to work, even though he's made a ton of money under Tiger. I still understand the need to work, but after his comments after the Bridgestone, there definitely was some just stupid comments made by him, saying this is the greatest week of his life and everything like that. So, yeah, in this whole saga, of course, you got to have some good stories, but Steve Williams definitely comes out horrible in this end of things. One of the top pitching prospects ever to probably make his major league debut last year was Steven Strasburg. Everybody had their eyes on him when he made his debut for the Nationals. Unfortunately, went down with Tommy John surgery. He has just made his rehab return for Class A. Struck out 4 batters. I really hope this guy can have a solid career because it's a lot of fun watching him pitch. And you can tell Washington loves him. They sell out when he pitches, and that's something right there. Fellow pitcher Jordan Zimmerman had a Tommy John surgery a couple of years back, and he's kind of bounced back to have a solid season. They are going to cap his innings, so he may be done for the season very soon. But he really had a great season this year for the Nationals, so I kind of have a feeling that Strasburg may also turn that around once he gets fully healthy. Unfortunately, we had a big injury here for the New York Giants. Their top draft pick, Prince Amukamara, from the Nebraska Cornhuskers, one of my favorite defenders, has a very sad start to his career. He broke his foot. He's going to be out for 2 months, and unfortunately, that's just a bad start for Prince's career. Hopefully, he can have a little bit of a bounce back here and get some production in 2011. We're going to now go to the Fantasy Baseball Roundup. We're going to take a look at a snapshot of the past 2 weeks, past 14 days in fantasy baseball. We'll start off with the best top performers overall for that 14-day period. And none other than Irvin Santana of the Anaheim Angels is ranked number 1 overall in fantasy over the past 2 weeks. He's continued to pitch very, very well since the no-hitter. Over that span, he's had 3 quality starts, all are wins, 24 strikeouts in 26 1/3 innings, and a .68 ERA with a .72 whip. Once again, ranked number 1 overall for fantasy in the past 2 weeks. In Toronto, Ricky Romero, he's trying to replace Doc Holliday as the ace of Toronto. He's ranked number 2 overall in fantasy. He's also got 3 quality starts and wins, 21 Ks over 24 and a third innings with 1.11 ERA and a .66 WHIP. On the batting side of things, a guy that just had a completely horrible year, and it would have even been worse if Adam Dunn wasn't even having a even worse of a year. But Dan Uggla of the Atlanta Braves has been on complete fire lately. He's at 30-game hitting streak as of Tuesday, August 9th. He got 1 for 5 in tonight's game, so he's extended that to 30 games. Over the past 14 days, he's batted .368 with 6 homers and 16 RBIs, and overall ranked 3rd in fantasy baseball. Down to the NL Central, Milwaukee Brewers. Prince Fielder having a big season just before he's going to get really paid. My guess is either by Washington or, cross my fingers, the Chicago Cubs. But it looks like he's going to get paid by somebody in the offseason. Over the past 2 weeks, though, 19 hits out of 42 at-bats. That's .452 batting average, 4 homers and 12 RBIs. That is good for 4th overall in fantasy. Now we'll look at some pickups, some guys that may be in the free agent waiver wire. We're now coming up with about 3 weeks to go in the regular season. You may want to, especially if you're in that 9th spot when there's 8 playoff teams, or that 7th spot when there's 6, you got to get that extra boost to try to get as many wins as you can. Hopefully these guys here that I give you are going to help you out with that. On the batting side, a guy I mentioned about a month ago, Jason Bay, well, he found himself back on the waiver wire because he really cooled off badly after his last hot streak. But in the past 14 days, he is ranked 32nd out of all baseball players in fantasy baseball. 3 home runs and 10 RBIs, batting .370 over that 2-week stretch, and he's only owned in 46% of Yahoo leagues. Another guy, Rick Ankiel, he's been playing a big part in reason why the Nationals have gone 7-3 in their last 10. His hot bat is the reason. 4 homers, 11 RBIs, batting .318. That ranks him 44th overall in Yahoo leagues. And over the past 14 days there, and he's only owned in 6%, so there's a great chance that he may be available if you need a little pop in the outfield. On the pitching side of things, Luke Hochevar from the Kansas City Royals. Once a top prospect in the Royals organization, he pitched for Tennessee, but over his first 5 seasons with the Kansas City Royals, he's been very, very shaky. But over the past month, he's really started to figure it out, I believe. The past month, he's ranked in the top 50 overall in fantasy baseball. Over the past 14 days, he's ranked 21st and only owned in 6% of the Yahoo leagues. His number rundown for those 2 weeks, he's got 2 wins, 3 quality starts, 20 strikeouts in 21 and a third innings, and a 1.69 ERA with a 0.89 WHIP. Another pitcher that may help you out is a good strikeout pitcher normally. He's had a rough couple of seasons, though, with the New York Yankees, Atlanta Braves. Now he's back with the Marlins here. That is Javier Vasquez, ranked 97th in fantasy baseball over the past 2 weeks and owned in 35% of Yahoo leagues. He only has 12 Ks in the past 20 innings, but he is a guy that can definitely average over 9 Ks per 9 innings. 3 quality starts, only 1 win. That's because he plays for the Marlins, with a 1.35 ERA and a 1.1 WHIP. That should those 4 guys, hopefully, if they're available, pick them up. If you got some guys you need to drop because they're just not producing, hopefully they can help you out, give you that boost into the playoffs. Also, on the topic of fantasy, we will also do a little bit of fantasy football rundown for you. We may do that for you the next show, or the last show of August. We'll definitely get some fantasy football talk in there. Time to go to our staple at the end of the podcast, the Gaming Tailgaters mailbag. And as always, if you go to thegamingtailgate.com, into the other section, there is the general thread for the podcast. Submit your questions there. Go to the Facebook page. You can also submit anything you want to hear, any questions that you have to ask for the mailbag. As always, in the WWE is where we start with a mailbag from Nature Boy. Wants to know if the whole point of the Punk Triple H Cena angle is to put Triple H over. In a way, I think so. He goes, is Triple H's ego out of control? Yes, it is. And that's probably why CM Punk is making fun of him for it on the mic, because basically CM Punk does have a little bit of liberties of what he can say on the mic. We all know Triple H, he's let off quite a few Raws, last couple of Raws lately, so he's always got to be on that camera. I do think the whole point of this is to put Triple H over. I do think it's also to elevate Punk in a way, but in the end, I think it's to elevate Triple H as the new COO of the WWE. MRH61988 has a little question about Madden. My thoughts on the later release date, or do I like it close? Do I like it closer to the start of the season, or do I want it earlier? My personal opinion is I like it closer to the start of the season for the main fact that it is closer to the start of the season. Get a little taste of that football before the regular season starts. Also kind of gives a little separation from college football, which releases on the second week of July. So I kind of like that month and a half separation, even though it kind of pushes it close to NHL for fans of all EA Sports games. But in the end, if you're getting them all, you're still spending the same amount of money. So I definitely prefer that the Madden release date be in the last week of August. Last Tuesday of August is good. Even the first week of September, I wouldn't even be mad at that either. Member of the Gaming Tailgate, Morris Draconis, had a nice little Q&A for fantasy football, so I decided to throw that into our mailbag this week. He had a bunch of great questions for even some newbies or guys that haven't been in the game for a while. The NFL game has changed, so definitely is good to ask some questions. His first question, considering most leagues use the snake draft where the last pick goes first in the next round, what pick would you make in the latter half of the round? We're talking about the first round. I put a big hype premium on quarterbacks due to the shift of the running back by committee that the league has taken. My pick there is if you see Aaron Rodgers or Mike Vick within picks 8 to 12, I would 100% take Rodgers. Vick is more of a risk, but as ESPN's Matthew Berry said, he would take Vick with the number 1 overall pick this year. He has a good feeling about Vick and what he could possibly do this year. Definitely take Rodgers if he's out there. 8 to 12 also is a good spot to take a top-tier wide receiver like Andre Johnson. He also asks, does pick 6 through 9 make a difference in your preference compared to 10 through 12? If you're at 6 through 9, I still like Aaron Rodgers at 6 through 9. I would draft him as early as 5, actually. People still covet those running backs early in the draft. That's mainly because there are so few that do not have a running back by committee. So they usually go 1 through 4, 1 through 5. After that, though, I would definitely make sure you get a wide receiver in the second round, as there's a good, solid crop that could be in the top 11 to 20 range. In my opinion, Andre Johnson and Roddy White are the only ones worth taking in the first round. Moore's also asked, who would you go with the third to fifth pick? I would say if Arian Foster drops, definitely grab him. Another year of him and Schaub together, he should see some improvement on his 61 catches from last year. And most boards have him at number 2 behind Adrian Peterson. If he slips in that 3 to 5 range, you definitely want to grab him. He also asks if Kyle Orton is a worthy top quarterback pick. I do not think so at all. The Broncos are in complete disarray. I've heard they have not looked good at camp at all. Even though he's put up some impressive numbers, I would not even take him as my first quarterback. If I don't get Rodgers, Vick, Breeze, Manning or Brady in the first 3 rounds, I probably won't take a quarterback till around round 8. And so there may be a chance that I take him as my top pick just because I'm not taking a quarterback till round 8. So that's a possibility, but overall I'm not too high on Orton. I believe ESPN has him ranked at 25 right now. Also, he asked, do you change your strategy based on positioning in the draft? If so, how? And I go, a little bit, but a lot of it plays on how the draft plays out. If I'm in the middle and Rodgers is sitting there, I'm definitely going to take him in the first round like I did last year. If I'm sitting at 3 and Foster's there, I'm taking Foster 100%. If I'm at the very tail end, I could waiver, go a running back or wide receiver, a combination in rounds 1 and 2, maybe a McCoy, Roddy White, if I'm sitting there on the end of the first round possibly. Finally, he asked, who is my top 10 overall? So I hadn't completely studied everything up until that point last week when he asked, so I went ahead, sat down, and looked at it, and here are my top 10 fantasy football players overall. Here's my Mel Kiper big board, if you want to say. Number 10, I have Roddy White. Number 9, Rashard Mendenhall. Number 8, Andre Johnson. Number 7, Chris Johnson. 6, LaShawn McCoy. 5, Ray Rice. 4, Aaron Rodgers. 3, Jamal Charles. 2, Adrian Peterson. And number 1, I have Adrian Foster. So there you go. That's a little bit of fantasy football. I'm going to do a complete rundown here in the next podcast or two before the season starts. So definitely make sure that you catch that. Final question of the day. PSU Snoop asks, the return of Tiger Woods, what do you think? How do you feel about it? I love it. I'm a big Tiger Woods fan. And it's unfortunate that golf relies on one guy to pique someone's interest. So it's the world that we live in, so it's always great when that one guy that the golf's interest is hinging on returns to play. I definitely liked his demeanor. He finished 38th. I believe he shot +1, and he was pretty happy. He said, I'm just happy to be out there. I think finally he might be getting everything past him with the divorce and with the injuries. And he's only 35. I mean, he may not be able to catch Jack exactly with the number of major wins, but at least he'll be out there for hopefully quite a long while because he is always fun to watch. Well, that's going to do it for episode 5 of the wonderful Black Hole of Sports podcast. Once again, I thank you so much for listening to me here. Next week, actually, since I am going to LA, that's why I kind of did a little week and a half spacing. We're going to go, the next podcast is August 21st, and I will have my first co-host ever on the show. You know him, CDJ. You know him from the Gaming Tailgate podcast. Him and I are going to do a little college football preview for you, and then also we may try to sneak in a couple of stories, top stories of the day, and of course always do fantasy baseball, and we may also give you a little bit fantasy football, maybe part 1 of 2, August 21st. So look for that podcast either on the 21st or the 22nd. That'll be the next one. As always, you can like the Facebook page by searching the wonderful Black Hole of Sports podcast, and you can also follow me on Twitter at JBHuskers. Follow the site at Gaming Tailgate, no the in there, at Gaming Tailgate. Make sure you get connected with us. And once again, I love to thank you for listening, and have a good one.
Space, the final frontier.
These are the voyages of the star.
Oh, come on!